My name is Matthew Houlihan, and I play Uncle Vanya in our production. I've always been familiar with Chekhov, but I feel that in the UK we traditionally have translated very literally from the Russian, and we've missed out on a lot of the humour and the absurdity which Russian theatre really has, which intertwines with the tragedy. So I feel as though our production has got back in touch with that, with our own translation. And I feel as though his writing is incredibly mature and ahead of its time. He writes, obviously, about man-made climate change, the first to ever write about that in a Western play. He talks about mental health, which is an incredible achievement for a play from the 19th century, particularly around men's mental health. So I feel a real connection to him, and I feel he's a very compassionate writer. Playing the part of Uncle Vanya can appear a very intimidating prospect because one views it through the lens of the Western sort of canon of theatre, and it's this incredibly demanding journey that an older actor can go through. We've brought the ages down slightly, but I feel as though the life experience, when I was looking at the page, the life experiences which he's had, I can relate to those. I can appreciate the journey of a man who is constantly comparing himself to others, who feels that he has been pushed aside in favor of other men, who has never known the love of a woman. I think all of these are really universal and relatable, particularly in the West, experiences. And I feel that the mental health aspect of the writing, the journey of discovery that he makes, it's incredibly emotionally mature. To be able to write that kind of a journey and a character for an audience, to really see the underlying layers of self-loathing and self-sacrifice and some level of guilt, of grief for a sister who he feels has been demeaned by another man who doesn't deserve the power and recognition that he's achieved. There's a class and a class element to it. There's a psychological element to it. There's a huge physical element to it in terms of our production, taking it from the page onto the stage. Our production physicalizes a lot of the journey in certain set pieces. And I found that really interesting, the vulnerability that reveals in this man who, to all intents and purposes, is a very strong farm land worker. I've fallen in love with the role, and I feel as though every actor takes what they have to it. I feel as though I've come to a point of understanding in terms of what I can glean from him, but I would love to learn more, and I feel as though the journey will never end in terms of the discoveries one can make about a character. My weirdest tour experience. I've loved the different experiences with the different audiences across the UK. what the different things that they laugh at. Um, Sometimes we've had much more vocal audiences than others. So some nights it's felt more like a pantomime in terms of the audience's responses to characters' decisions and the miscommunications that go on between the characters. Um, uh, in the southeast of England, it's been a lot more um, uh, prim and English, the response, whereas uh, in other places we've had incredible audience interaction. um, in terms of the tour itself, I've loved visiting some. There's been two occasions where we've been to a pub, and it's actually a former opera house that's been converted into a pub. And just the idea of that witnessing that kind of legacy across the UK of performance spaces which are still used in some public capacity. I found that really interesting and weird. My favourite venue has to be Richmond, Yorkshire. It's a it's I think it's the oldest ongoing theatre space in the UK, and it's incredibly well crafted and beautiful and intimate, and the audience were wonderful. What surprised me about the process has been the element of learning how to deepen the character's experience in order to make the responses fresh. In terms of a long-term tour, it's very important that you can not allow a mechanical response, just remembering the lines, but to actually go on that journey every night. And it's more challenging in terms of your stamina and in terms of your intellectual clarity and emotional freshness and everything like that. I think it's a very interesting training in that sense for any actor. Our version is not a large set with intricate details and a full farm kitchen. It's an intimate production which gets to the center and the heart of the misunderstandings, the the absurdities of the relationships at hand, and the unique experiences that each character has, because it is a tragedy, and on another level it's a comedy of errors. So we've gone beyond the surface level of this is a 19th century Russian play that's a tragedy to making some real discoveries about what it is uh, to be a person in that particular situation, wrestling with those choices and trying to express yourself as best you can. My character, Uncle Vanya, in 3 words: misunderstood, observant, yearning. And by that I mean yearning to express himself to others, to be understood, to he's asking for help. Our Uncle Vanya in 3 words: dynamic, intimate, wrenching. And do I see any of the qualities of Uncle Vanya in myself? What I feel really is appealing about this process is that the role is very ahead of his time. It's an exploration in male mental health in a way that is so clear to me. Vanya is constantly signaling to other characters that he seeks their help. He understands his own position, his own decline, he's trying to remedy it. And it's really agonizing to me to see on a tragic journey somebody who is so aware of what is ailing them, and they're making discoveries all the time, but they're just not able to convince others because of their own inability to communicate on some level, to view them as somebody who is in need of help and in need of healing. And I think for that period in history, there wasn't an understanding of what mental health is as a form of medicine, as a form of science. So for me, the journey is an incredibly important one, and it's a cathartic one. And as somebody myself who's experienced mental health as a challenge in the past, I think it's extremely important that we talk about this, particularly for men, particularly in terms of what it means to be masculine, because in so many ways Vanya is a masculine character. But in another way, he's much more than that. He's able to observe himself from outside and see why and in what ways he is in pain. And I think that's such an incredible message for a modern audience. For me, the process has been a beautiful one. To work with Nadia Papakronipoulou, the director, to work with such a beautiful theatre company as Theatrical Niche, with the wonderful and very patient and very supportive Venetia Twig, with an extremely talented and supportive cast, the physical work which we've put into that journey in terms of the physical movement pieces. It's brought out an inner journey, an inner landscape, which has really, I feel, given my own performance a quality which I'm very proud of. So for me, I'm very honoured to be in this position, to play this role, and to do it in such an authentic and personal way with an audience. It's beautiful. A weird fact about myself: I really loved the concept of bees and bee conservation as part of this project. That I just knew I really wanted to be involved, because I would love to be a beekeeper and have hives and have a farm of sorts, which I suppose is another parallel to Vanya. Thank you for listening.